Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
Many times, when creating a primary key field within a table, you will assign the field a numeric data type. You can use the auto-increment feature when creating this field in many relational database systems to automatically increase the increment used within this numeric field to ensure that each record entered will receive its own unique identification number. However, the implementation of this feature varies widely amongst the individual relational database management systems. There is no core SQL for the implementation of this specific feature, so you must check the documentation for your specific RDBMS to create a primary key field that contains auto-incrementing numeric values. Below is the general SQL syntax used to denote an auto-increment field when creating a table in MySQL. So you would have create table, then the table name parameter, then the field list within parentheses, starting with the first field, which is defined in the example as integer, and the not null SQL constraint, and also the new auto-increment constraint. Then the next field with its data type and SQL constraints, and so on until you've added all of the fields you need to the table. Finally, you have the primary key on the original field name that is also the auto-increment field. So in this MySQL example, note that you do have to add the auto-increment constraint at the end of the field to define it as containing auto-incrementing values. Also note that this field was also assigned the integer data type so that it will contain numeric integer values. It was also assigned the not null SQL constraint so that it cannot contain null values. The last line of the syntax used the primary key constraint to define the field as the primary key of the table. Note that when you add records to this table in the future using the insert SQL statement, you will not need to specify a value for the auto-incremented field. It will automatically assign a number when a new record is added. The field will begin starting numbering with the number 1. If you wish to start at a different number, you can use the alter table command to set the starting number by using the following general syntax in MySQL. Note that the number parameter shown is the number at which you want the auto-incrementing field to begin numbering. In this case, the syntax is alter table, then the table name, auto-increment equals, and then the number to use for the starting number. Now, if you're using Microsoft SQL Server, you will use the identity Xy constraint to specify auto-incrementing field values when creating the table. Note that when using the identity constraint, the X parameter specifies the starting number of the field, and the Y parameter specifies the increasing number sequence to use. So for example, identity open parenthesis 1, 1, close parenthesis, will create a field that starts numbering at the number 1 and increases its value by 1 for each future record added. Alternately, identity open parenthesis 10, 2, close parenthesis, will start numbering at 10 and increase consecutively by 2 for each record added. So the first 4 records in the table would be numbered 10, 12, 14, 16, and so forth. As with many other RDBMS implementations, however, you will not need to specify a value for the auto-incrementing field when using the insert SQL statement to add records to the table in the future. The general syntax for creating an auto-incrementing field within SQL Server in the create table statement is shown below. Create table, then the table name, then the field list within parentheses, starting with the first field name of the auto-incrementing field, the integer data type being declared, then identity, and in parentheses the X and Y parameters, primary key SQL constraint, comma, and then the rest of the field names and data types within the table. Now, if you're using Microsoft Access, you can basically substitute the keyword auto-increment for the identity keyword as used within SQL Server to create an auto-incrementing field within a table in the create table statement. You can simply use the auto-increment keyword by itself to create an auto-incrementing field that starts at 1 and numbers in increasing values by 1. You can also use the auto-increment XY keyword variation to specify both a starting number and a numeric increment by which to increase the values assigned. The general SQL syntax for creating an auto-incrementing primary key field within a Microsoft Access table is shown below. Now note that in Microsoft Access you do not need to specify a data type parameter when creating an auto-increment field. This field also corresponds to the auto number data type used when creating tables in the visual design view of a table within the Microsoft Access interface. In this way, auto-increment is also a declaration of data type within this particular RDBMS. So the syntax is create table, table name, then the field list for the table within parentheses, starting with field name, auto-increment, primary key, comma, then the rest of the field names and data types. Let's look at an example of the create table and auto-increment field within Access 2013. So here we've got the create table statement for the sample my table. And you can see that we have create table my table, ID field being the name of the first field, auto-increment, primary key, comma, then number field being the name of the second field, double for its data type, comma, and then the first name field being the third field, with text being its data type, close parenthesis, and then a semicolon. So if we execute this by clicking the Run button in Access, we just create the new table, and if we look at it in Design View, we can see that it's an auto number field for its data type.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.